Energy is one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century. Rapid industrialization and growing population is changing the scenario of the world. Large amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases have been released into the atmosphere, trapping more heat, leading to serious changes in the Earth's climate. The International Energy Agency predicts that by the year 2030, the world will require 60% more energy. Trinidad and Tobago accounts for only 0.1% of greenhouse gas emissions in the global context, but has a relatively high per capita emission, approximately 23.87 tons of carbon dioxide, the highest in the Caribbean region. Global demand for refrigeration and air conditioning equipment is very worrisome. Globally speaking, the refrigeration and air conditioning equipment penetration is growing at 8 to 10% annually in developing countries, and Trinidad and Tobago is following this trend. District cooling is a well-proven technological solution to promote energy efficiency and efficient use of resources to increase energy security, climate change resilience, and disaster risk reduction. The process begins in a central plant where water is chilled. The plant is connected to insulated underground pipes, which forms a primary network that distributes chilled water to surrounding buildings. Thereafter, a secondary network within the customer's buildings further circulates the chilled water. Air is then forced past the cold water pipes to produce an air-conditioned environment, ensuring there is adequate fresh, cooled air, but it is not oversupplied. The warm water in the primary circuit is recycled to the central plant to be rechilled.
It's now 24 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. You're back on the Now Morning Show. I'm Kimberly Do Souza. Now, we did celebrate World Environment Day on Sunday, and we have been discussing ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint and leave a cleaner space for future generations. And so we're going to be talking to somebody from the UNDP who has partnered with the Government of Trinidad and Tobago to find energy efficiency ways that we can do just that. So with me, I have Mr. Anselm Simon, who actually is the Energy Efficiency RAC, or the project manager for this project. Good morning, Mr. Simon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Now, the energy efficiency, I know it's a mouthful, the energy efficiency through the development of low-carbon RAC technologies project. What is that about?
Okay, so this project is about, assisting Trinidad and Tobago in making its impact or contributing towards the reduction of carbon emissions, and also addressing chemicals and gases that affect or deplete the ozone layer.
And in terms of the partnership with the Government of T&T, how did that come about?
Okay, so the partnership with the government, every year the Global Environmental Facility generates a pot of funds for developing countries such as Trinidad and Tobago. And in 2017, we sought to address the issue of the low uptake of these types of technologies in the RAC sector in Trinidad. Right, and we moved forward to the creation of project concept, and also got approval from the GEF for funding up to the tune of $5.1 million for the deployment of the project over a 4-year period. Right, this is one of the largest allotments to Trinidad and Tobago in history. Right, and as part of that arrangement, the Trinidad and Tobago government is actually implementing the project with the support of the United Nations Development Program.
Now, I know part of the project is to develop low-carbon refrigeration and air conditioning technologies, but, I mean, what is the purpose of it really? Is it to combat climate change? Is it to combat overpopulation? How exactly does it make that relation?
Okay, so it addresses climate change from the standpoint of carbon emissions directly and indirectly. When you think about electricity and electricity production in Trinidad and Tobago, we generate it by burning hydrocarbons or fossil fuels, right? The RAC sector is one that hasn't traditionally been considered when you think about carbon emissions. In Trinidad, we think about the transportation sector, we think about the oil industry. But really and truly, the RAC sector also contributes to it directly by some of the refrigerants that are utilized in the systems, and also indirectly through the amount of electricity it utilizes to produce cooling.
Now, you keep mentioning the RAC. What's the RAC stand for? What it is exactly?
The RAC is the refrigeration and air conditioning sector.
Okay. And so they also have some gases that go into the air that we can cut down on.
Correct.
Okay, nice. I mean, and so do we have, because I mean, we live in a hot country, so I can't imagine not having my air conditioner. So do we have alternatives that we can use to keep cool, that sort of thing?
Yes, so this project would look at, always looking at replacement of the actual technology itself to utilize more efficient technologies or technologies that require less electricity to perform, and also the transformation or transition to more natural refrigerants, right? In the introduction, we mentioned district cooling. The heat transfer medium for district cooling is water. What's more natural than water? Water would not adversely impact the environment. So we utilize ammonia, which is one type of natural refrigerant, hydrocarbons, which has traditionally been used in the industrial sector and is very efficient, as the alternatives. These have a lower impact on the environment directly and also require less electricity to function, which would indirectly affect the amount of carbon emissions for the sector as it utilizes less electricity.
Now, whenever we talk about green or organic, Mr. Simon, I feel like it sounds expensive. So if we are talking about these alternatives, I mean, how much is it going to cost a consumer to maybe look to find a greener alternative?
Okay. So when we think about RAC, we think about, if I deaggregate RAC, we have refrigeration, which covers refrigerators, freezers, items utilized to preserve, and also space cooling, right? The technology as it relates to refrigerators and freezers are relatively inexpensive because the technology has actually been introduced more than a decade ago, right? The refrigerant of choices are 600, which is, as I mentioned, a hydrocarbon. The sector that we are pressing segment that we're pressing even further for is the actual space cooling or your ACs, right? Currently, more energy efficient alternative may cost a consumer about $1,000 more, right? But through this project and through the trust and partnership between UNDP and the National Ozone Unit of the Ministry of Planning and Development, we hope to create that market change that would, bring more of that type of technology in Trinidad. And once there are greater volume, the prices would, of course, decrease.
Right. Now, what do the equipment look like? Is it going to be something smaller that's going to be in my home? Is it going to take up less space? I mean, what are the other benefits to making this switch to alternatives?
Okay. So, first of all, I mean, as a fellow citizen, it'll reduce the amount of electricity that you use. So the first place you'd feel it is in your pocket.
Of course, yes.
Also, with all technologies, as you advance, these equipment become smaller. They become, they have a lower footprint, as they see, right? And, it gives you a sense of well-being. You feel better knowing that you impact the environment positively, because at the end of the day, we're thinking generations down the road, right? We're in a situation where the temperature has increased by 2 degrees, right, over the last decade, and we feel it physically and we see it. We had a dry season that was mostly wet, so climate change is real. And being a part of the change that will get us back to some kind of synergy or normalization with nature, gives you a sense of fulfillment.
So what I'm hearing as well is that T&T kind of has to play catch up to get these equipment and this, this technology locally. I mean, how can we go about doing that?
So as part of the project, one of the components deals with policy reform, right? So the project would attack it from a multi-directional approach, right? We're looking at tax incentives. We're looking at enhancing existing policies as it relates to energy efficiency. And also, we're looking at regulating the type of equipment imported into Trinidad and Tobago, right? That coupled with the demonstration projects and pilot projects we have under our remit, like the district cooling projects, which would basically showcase, proof of concept, right, for both land developers and business owners, right, backed up with capacity development and education for the sector. We believe that partner with, sensitizing and educating the man on the streets would help us towards that, meeting that goal.
Right. Now, I know sometimes we go to buy these refrigerators and these ACs and we see that yellow tab that says energy efficient. Is that all we need to look for to ensure that, we are actually choosing something that is less poisonous to the environment? Is that all we need to look for, that yellow tag?
To be honest, I for me personally, I mean, I've fallen short because, you know, I might never have had all the information when I was purchasing my appliances. But I look at 4 major areas, right? And I'd recommend that, you know, the populace looks at 4 different areas. One, choosing a piece of equipment or appliance that suits your needs. You know, in Trinidad, sometimes you say bigger is better.
Yes.
Right? Choose an appliance that is suitable for your needs in terms of your refrigerator and freezers. Right? Also, I encourage the consumer or the customer to ask questions when a technician comes to your home, you know, as it relates to speccing the room. Make sure it's the correct AC size for the room, because you don't want a situation where it's too small. That would cause the motors to run even harder and offset, you know, any kind of energy savings it has. And also, if it's too big, you'd use more energy than you really require. Right? The second area I'd look at is, you know, the type of refrigerant as mentioned. So if you go to Court or any other appliance store, you know, you look for refrigerators that have natural refrigerants like R600E, right? The third area is, as you would have mentioned, the label, right? So you look for Energy Star rating, you look for the energy efficiency ratio, right? That's a ratio that's displayed on the label. The bigger the better. We look for a rating of 13 and above, right? The higher the value means that you get more bang for your buck, meaning that for lower power consumption, you get a greater cooling capacity, right? And finally, which is where I fell short, you know, did you know that the design of the fridge dictates how much energy or power it utilizes?
No, I never knew that. I just like the 2 doors look fancy, and I just think they're pretty, and I choose that one. Yeah. But it does. How so? So
things like add-ons like an ice maker or a water dispenser actually increases the power consumption by 15% up, right? And for 2-door and 3-door refrigerators with a top-mounted freezer as opposed to one that's bottom-mounted saves you 15 to 20% on your electricity bill generated from that appliance in itself.
But for those who have big families, I mean, do you suggest not buying the 2-door and maybe getting that in a freezer? Because I'm still seeing there's going to be a lot of energy consumption still. So how are they going to work that out?
Well, in that area, you could actually think about, as you say, deaggregating it. So have a freezer using, of course, energy efficient technology and the required refrigerants, and a refrigerator that suits your general needs. You don't want to open the refrigerator and realize that half the space isn't being utilized. That's, you know, you're wasting energy.
Of course. Now, I know we would have celebrated World Environment Day on Sunday. I mean, did the UNDP do anything to commemorate the day?
Many of the projects under the UNDP would have engaged in different activities. For our project, we would have done a webinar last Friday, the 3rd, as it relates to passive cooling, which is one of the items that we actually encourage. So passive cooling would allow you to control your internal and external environment through means of the type of materials that you utilize in construction, like the type of glass, the type of building material, and also utilization of natural ways to keep your space cool, like plants and plant walls and that type of thing. Right, but for us, you know, World Environmental Day doesn't only drop in June. We celebrate it. We try to encourage it throughout the year. We actually extended our engagement until the 5th of July. Right, on the 3rd, we actually have a car rally to commemorate it. We are partnering with the Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Association on that.
Yes. And so, as you mentioned, projects. What are some of the other projects we can look forward to throughout this year?
So currently we are deploying our district cooling pilot projects, right? One is in Point Lisa, Scuba, and the other is in Marabella. And we are also engaged in 6 other demonstration projects under this project. 2 enlisting hoteliers in Tobago. They are swapping out inefficient technology for their rooms to more energy efficient technology, right? And we're also engaged with certain governmental parties and also some private sector organizations.
So there are several projects under this one project and different timelines.
Correct.
Okay, got it now. All right. And so if the public or anybody needs more information, is there a website or any social media handles they can go to?
Of course. So you can reach us at our website, eer.gov.tt, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just search the Energy Efficiency in RAC project.
Nice. I think I'm seeing the website on air. That's it, right? eer.gov.tt.
Right.
Nice. And finally, Mr. Simon, I mean, anything we may have missed, anything you want to share, any words of advice for the public as they're going out to purchase those appliances?
Well, I encourage both the public to inquire and ask questions to the persons that they engage with, the technicians, the salespersons. Also engage stakeholders in Trinidad at large to partner with us, including media houses like TTT.
Of course.
To drive this market change that would not only impact this generation but generations to come, and help Trinidad and Tobago, contribute to a more sustainable cooling path.
Now, as I have you here, I just have to ask, I mean, it's a question that you get asked all the time, but what else can we do to really ensure that we have an environment or a world for future generations to enjoy?
Yes, that's a question that's always asked. Right, you have to, one, be cognizant of the environment. We have a lot of issues with littering, plastic waste, due diligence, as my grandmother used to say, manners begins at home, so you practice it yourself, right, and then expand it out to your community, in the community. It could be small organizations, churches, encourage each other, and also, the information is out there, read up, ensure that, you're aware of, what affects us now and how you could impact and make a change.
Mr. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today and just sharing exactly what the UNDP is doing to ensure that we become an energy efficient country and, of course, leave a world for future generations to enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Mr. Anselm Simon, the project manager who is in charge of the Energy Efficiency Project, which is a partnership between the UNDP and the Government of T&T. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.